What's up everyone, my name is Biku and I'm back with an update on this 20 by 20 extrusion printer that I've been building. Last time I showed you this printer, it looked a lot different. The top was still the old MakerBot type XY system. I have changed over to a CoreXY system, as you can probably see with the belts everywhere. And then also I have upgraded from just straight up running Marlin on one of the boards like I've always done to Klipper. So that is a MKS Pi designed for Klipper, but Raspberry Pi clone thing. And yeah, this video is kind of just going to be about me detailing, not really detailing, this isn't a how-to guide, but giving you my experience of migrating over to Klipper from Marlin I've been using Marlin for probably about 10 years now. So to go on to Klipper has been interesting, challenging, fun, and ultimately I think it's been worth it. But yeah, let me get started. This is not a how-to. I'm not telling you how to install Klipper, because if I had to do it again, I'd probably spend another 3 weeks trying to remember everything I did. So let's start off with CoreXY. So I have built printers, normal Cartesian bed slingers. I've tried to do Ultimaker style. I've tried to do like MakerBot style. Delta, I've built Delta printers. And this is my first CoreXY. It isn't perfect. It's my own design, but there is a lot of issues with it, as I'm sure anyone that's familiar with CoreXY will be able to spot out. But it is working nicely. It is much better than the system that I had before, so I'm pretty happy with it, even if it is imperfect and still needs to be updated. So a couple of the things that I didn't know when going and modifying and changing this to a CoreXY printer. I mean, obviously I knew the belt loop, the belts are very, very long. That was interesting, and routing the belts through all this is a pain. I probably could have designed it to give myself a little bit of an easier time, but live and learn, I guess. But yeah, altogether, I think going to CoreXY was a fun experience. I don't know if I would do it again exactly like this, but I think CoreXY does have a lot of advantages. Some disadvantages that I wasn't aware of, but it does definitely have a lot of advantages. Mechanically, it's quite a bit simpler than a lot of other things, but to get it working well is another story. So one of the things that I noticed is that belt length is incredibly important. You have to have your belts exactly the same length, and they have to be tightened to the same tightness, because if you have one belt that is tighter than the other, it will actually cause the X or Y, whichever one it is on yours, to be tilted either way, because the belt is actually pulling on it. Now, this printer is just using 8mm chromed rods and LM8UU bearings, so that issue is not as big of an issue if you're using linear rails where the whole motion system is a lot more constrained. But I'm not, so I had to be very careful and make sure that all my belts were exactly the same length and tightened to the same tightness. So it took a bit of work, but right now it is working well. The print quality is much better than the system that I had before. Not to say that other systems aren't as good. It just depends on how it's set up and how it's built and the rigidity and constraints of the system, but this is much better than the system that I had previously built. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, I think it looks a lot neater. It's a lot faster, definitely. Much less weight in the effector, or tool head, whatever you want to call it. I do have plans to convert this to a tool changer at some point, but that is way in the future. So yeah, a couple other modifications that I've done. You probably can tell there, the glowing boy over there, that's a BL Touch. As far as I know, it's a genuine one, but it works well enough. Much better than the inductive probes that I've tried to use in the past. I don't know, I found there's too much variance in where it's actually probing to give you a pinpoint spot of where it's probing to make it accurate for bed leveling. The BL Touch has been awesome. I have also, you won't be able to really see it, but I have also upgraded the drivers to Trinamic. I'll put the name or the model in here. They are brilliant. I love them. I wish I would have swapped to them sooner. I've only got it on X and Y. I didn't really feel the need to do it on Z, considering it's not really moving as much. And I don't really need the extra power because this is going through a reduction over here. So the motor has more than enough power as it is to move the bed up with your standard Palulu drivers. But yeah, running the Trinamic drivers has been interesting. Also, like all of this, even though this has been a thing in 3D printing for a long time, this is my first time playing with these things. So getting them up and running was interesting, definitely. It helps that I've got the board that I have is designed to have them. So it's got the UART, I forget if it's UART or SPR, but whatever the communication pins are, it's got the pins on the board already. I haven't managed to get sensorless homing working. I'm not 100% certain if it can, but I don't really need sensorless homing. And as far as I can tell, the really cool things that you can do with these drivers, the step loss detection and stuff like that, isn't really supported in Klipper. I could be wrong, but I don't think it is. Either that or I haven't managed to get it working yet. So that's that. It's not the most amazing thing ever, and yes, you can mock me for the atrocities that is this wiring. This is still temporary, as this is still being developed, if you will. I basically just play with this in my spare time. So let's get on to Klipper. Klipper. So this, like I said, is just it's the MKS Pi V1.1. Klipper took me probably about 3 weeks to get up and running properly. Now, the guides and everything that you can find online are great. They're all very useful, but I feel like they skip over a lot of the first timey stuff. A lot of the guides are expecting you to just plonk a Klipper board into a printer that already has a profile built out for it, and it's kind of meant to be plug and play. When you're designing something ground up, it's a lot more faff and finding and Googling and going onto weird forums to find pinouts and stuff like that. So let's get started. So got the Klipper module, installed Klipper, everything was great. This specific module had a specific Klipper, had a specific firmware image that was designed for it that has Klipper, but it was giving some like authentication errors or something. It was super weird. So I ended up just flashing, I can't even remember what I flashed onto it, but I flashed another image onto it and installed Klipper from scratch. Or no, I believe I actually used the Moonraker image. I forget these things with the mainsail and Moonraker and Klipper and Clippy. There's so many different parts of this that I've forgotten part of it. But Klipper was installed, no issues, but for the life of me, actually getting it to work with the board took me probably about a week in itself. And that's because when people tell you online, there's a config file that you need to update to actually, make the Klipper board communicate with the control board. But they didn't mention that it's not the files that are just in the mainsail front end. You actually have to, at least the easiest way that I found to do it was to SSH in and navigate to the file path. There is a text editor built into mainsail, but I couldn't find out how to use that text editor to edit a file that isn't in the configs folder on the front end. So that is what it is. And then last but not least, this is, a ramps derived board. So you would think that finding all the pinouts should be relatively simple, right? Yes and no. using just a ramps board config got me most of the way there. But one thing that I found very interesting is that Klipper uses the hardware pinout labels on the what's it? No, not the Atmega 2560. Whereas Arduino, which is I'm used to just doing all this in the Arduino IDE for Marlin, uses Arduino pinout labels. So finding actual pinout conversions, not the simplest thing ever. And I mean, getting the Trinamic drivers set up and the BL Touch set up and getting all the pinouts for all those and the hardware pin labels. That was a big mission, and I'm not gonna lie, every time like getting just the BL Touch to sense felt like a major achievement, and it was interesting. Where with Marlin, I've known how to do these things forever, since probably 2018 or so. But Klipper is a different beast. It is definitely very different, but I understand now why people change over to it. Especially input shaping. Input shaping and how actually simple it was to get set up was a dream, and prints, I've never had prints that look that nice. So you can see this is just a little benchy. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. And here is the inevitable benchy. So there's still a couple issues that need to be sorted out, but overall, I'd say it's pretty decent. There's a couple lines here, but it's not as bad if you feel it with your finger. And there is a bit of stringing, but yeah, you can see that's not too great. This extruder, where is it? Wherever the extruder is. This extruder is just a very, very basic direct drive Bowden extruder, so this and the hot end need some tweaking, but the motion system itself, you can see there's definitely potential, even though there's some issues that need to be sorted out. I've been used to Octopi for the longest time, so actually getting used to something else, obviously people stick with what they're used to for the most part. But I think it's been good. I know there's Mainsail and I forget the other one. I chose Mainsail just because it looked like the one that was easier to get up and going. And I believe the other one wasn't in active development any longer or something like that. But yeah, the Mainsail front end looks a lot better than Octopi. I like the utilitarian look of Octopi, but Mainsail is pretty. So yeah, I'm going to give you one last look to give you nightmares at the cables. And yes, this power supply is just zip tied on there for now. This is a bit of a rush job just to get everything on the printer. I've been working with it with the power supply just laying down and things like that. This will get cleaned up in due time when things, when this printer's working nicely. I can actually print a decent electronics box for this. But yeah, for now, it's working nicely. A lot of changes made to the printer. If anyone wants the files, I can by all means upload them, but this isn't great. I like it, it's worked well, but there's probably better ones out there. I designed it specifically for what I have, so there wasn't really a good CoreXY already existing system that I found that uses LM8UU drivers that bolts onto 2020 extrusion and kind of fit how I wanted it to. So I ended up just designing it myself. Lots of pulleys as well, CoreXY, lots of pulleys. Something else that's I learned the hard way when it comes to CoreXY in general with printers, but I haven't really had this issue until CoreXY, until I designed this CoreXY system. I had steel reinforced belts in here, and I learned the hard way that that's not a good idea, because the actual steel reinforcing lines in the belt snapped, and I was starting to get weird issues where as the printer would home, the the gantry would actually tilt in as it homes, and it took me probably 2 or 3 days of just looking at this thing to understand what was going on and why this was happening. So I have since swapped to nylon reinforced belts. Well, no, not nylon, whatever these are. These are like a fiber reinforced belts. And yeah, that's, as I found out, relatively common knowledge, but I have never had this issue before. I've had printers that have steel reinforcing cables in the belts, and I've had them run for 5 years, no issues. And this one, within about a month of, you know, decently active printing, they snapped. So now you know. So yeah, if nothing else, I hope this video gives you enjoyment, and if you're looking to do something similar, I hope you can learn from my mistakes and what I found out and discovered along the way. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.